Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about percentages of companies that use algorithmic code tests. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, in your experience, what percentage of companies use algorithm code test as their interview question, other than the FANG companies? I would say it's about 50-50, depending on region. Of course, that's the problem with answering this question is there is always a trend. There's always like a guys, depending on what IT companies you're dealing with, some of them are going to use the code test and some of them are going to use something besides the code test. And that's the horrible part about being in an industry where we don't really have all that well defined rules. It is tough, and the best thing I can tell you is that you're gonna have to just face the fact that you might be tested on application development and like actual coding, and you might be tested on trivia questions, as I like to call them, which are usually these algorithmic code tests. So it's not just the FANG companies. Pretty much 50-50. It's a made-up number, guys, but there is a fairly high amount of different companies who are testing this, regardless of how we might feel about it. So it is a worthwhile investment for you to at the very least know like some like this basics of the data structures and like understanding how like a linked list, well, what is that, like what is a queue, and so forth and so forth. These basics are usually the what people are looking for. So I think that you should invest some time in it, but at the same time I also want to tell you that that's not where your focus should be. And that's kind of the thing, right, that is a little bit misleading about the way that the internet really promotes the importance of these sorts of algorithmic code tests. An example is that yes, the FANG companies are famous for using this sort of stuff, and for some reason people mistakenly associate that with that this is the thing that they should focus on in order to make it in IT, when the reality is that it's much more like just something that you do in order to get your foot in the door. Because I can promise you, if you go and work for the FANG companies, your first day on the job is not going to be a trivia question the first thing you're going to do. You're not going to be asked to implement a binary tree. Your first job is going to be most likely something very similar to what every single company under the sun is doing. It's never been anything different. In every single company I've ever worked in, the same thing is always true. You will literally just use those code tests and algorithmic skills to get your foot in the door, and then the real work start, which is much more adjacent to, as I said, the sort of like real world problems that some companies test you on. That's why I personally feel that those sorts of tests are much more they're more appropriate to gauge how good somebody is. The FANG companies are different in the sense that if you have a code test that is just an algorithmic code test, that's a cheap way of just checking if somebody has coding skills. And a company such as, I don't know, Facebook or Google or Amazon or so forth, they are in most likely desperate need of a very efficient screening process. If you think about it, if you have a small little consultancy with just a handful of applicants, what purpose does the code test fill? They're not going to do anything of the stuff that you're testing them for on their first day. It's much more in your case, much better to go for a quality test that really checks if you know the stuff that we do at that company. If you're one of the FANG companies, you have thousands of people every single day who wants to work for you. You're not be going, and you might, I mean, if you have a quality process, it's going to take longer. You don't have the time to screen all of these people in the same way. There's no way. So you need a very efficient and quick way, a cheap way, to just screen people out so that you can get some, like a filter of people coming in, and you will still quality test those people when they get in. And that's exactly what is good about these sorts of algorithmic tests. But some companies, as I said, they are using code tests for that purpose, and it makes sense because it's a big company. And some companies just use it because it's, as I said, it's cheap. It's it's weird, I think, but if you don't know any better, or if you can't be bothered to create a better testing process, that's the way it goes. And as I said, it's usually 50-50, but I can assure you that it's not, I mean, if you fail a code test in one company, that doesn't mean that you're going to have the same problem in every single company. You just got to keep at it. So what I want you to take away from this is that, at least from my experience, it's usually 50-50 between, it's a crapshoot every time you go to a company. You don't know if they're going to test you on an algorithmic trivia question, or if they're going to give you a decent coding challenge that will be like 2 hours of work maybe, or if they're going to do some really crazy shit like, oh, come and work for us half a day, or oh, here's a code test that will take a week. I have seen it all. I've seen it all when it comes to these weird things. And I'm not gonna lie, the hiring process is bullshit in IT. It really is. It sucks so much. But if you want to work as a software developer, that's kind of the lay of the land. And I think that it's going to continue that way for quite some time, because every single IT company is just, they're just trying to make a process that works for them. And there's not really a standard way of evaluating how good a software developer is. So everybody makes up their own stuff. Have a great day.